All right, how's it going, class? So this is Mr. Miles again, and we're back with the podcast. So this is gonna be a little bit of a refresher of a little bit of the stuff we went over right before break, and some of the fun things that we can do with genetics we're gonna mess with right here. So if you remember, what we're talking about is we're talking about alleles, and alleles are the things that determine what you look like. So what we were dealing with right before we left is we were dealing with effects that only deal with two alleles. Most of the things in our bodies have a lot of different alleles, a lot of different genes that are contributing things to it. But the ones that we're focusing on is we're focusing on two. And this is going to bring us to my man, Gregor Mendel. And if you turn to page 74 in your books, hopefully you have your book with you. If you turn to page 74, we can learn about Mendel. And if you remember, Mendel was the one, he was observing pea plants, and he noticed that there'd be the first generation, so remember that's the pea generation with the parents. So here's our plants, ugly ones. So there's our plants, and he noticed maybe there'd be something unique about one of them. Maybe it would have, one red leaf. And that's not what he observed, but I'm just using this as an example. Then he'd get to the F1 generation, which is, you remember, if you have your parents and you have your children. He could see plants that have absolutely no red leaves. Now, even though the parents might have each had one red leaf, these ones don't. But then all of a sudden, F2 comes along, and these leaves make a resurgence. All of a sudden, these red leaves start coming back. And so it's made him wonder about how these different traits are passed on. Remember, these are called traits. And that's how we're dealing with genetics and with heredity. And remember, heredity is passing on genes, and genetics is just simply studying that. Next page. Come on, buddy. Okay. So, what we're going to do is we are going to mess with our own type of genetics, and we're going to look at how inheritance works. Now, if you remember, you can have two different types of alleles with the basic ones we're dealing with. You can have the dominant alleles, and you can have the recessive alleles. So big D for dominant, and then R for recessive. Now, again, like I said, this is the simplest ones. You can get ones that will sometimes mask each other, sometimes partially mask each other, but we're just doing dominant recessive. And what dominant means is, let's say somebody has blue eyes. So let's change this to blue. So somebody has blue eyes. Now, blue eyes are actually recessive. So we'll indicate that with a little r. And then somebody else has brown eyes. Close enough. These are yellow, but whatever. Somebody has these. Now, what you'd think is maybe we'd want to put like a D there, but when you're writing with this so you don't get confused, you always use the same letter. So if you're using a little r for recessive, you use a big R for dominant. Now, if you were using D's, then this would just be a little d, and this would be a big D. And so you can do that with any letters if you want to do it with Q and a big Q. Just remember, and this is the important thing, is that it always matters that if this is uppercase, that means it's dominant. If this is lowercase, it means it's recessive. So we have blue eyes, and we have brown eyes. Now the blue eyes, when you're looking at these, you can tell exactly what genes they have. Because remember, blue is recessive, so you need to have two little r's. So we're going to go little r, little r. Because if there was a big R in there, the dominant one would mask it. So this one could either be big R, or big R, or little r. And it doesn't matter with the order if you have a little r or big R. It could be any one of these. We know what he is, but we have not 100% positive here. Now, we're going to look at a pedigree chart and learn how to be able to mask that in a little bit to figure all those out. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go to the next one. So let's say we have somebody, so let's change this pen setting, that looks kind of annoying. So let's say we have somebody that has, and let's say we know their genes, and we know that they're big R, little r. So here's the dad, and then here's the mom. And she's a little r, little r. Well, what we're going to do is we are going to be able to figure out a way to determine the probability of what their children eye color will be. Now, if you remember, probabilities like if I flip a coin, so let's say we have a coin right here, and I flip that coin, it's got a 50% chance of landing on heads and a 50% chance of landing on tails. So the probability is 50-50. Now, let's say we're flipping 2 coins, and we have to guess completely. Well, no, actually, don't scratch that. That one's going to get too complicated. Let's just keep it with this one nice and simple. Probability, flipping a coin, 50-50. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to do something, create something called a Punnet Square to look at probability. And the way that these work is these determine probability of what parents can expect to have out of children. Now, if you remember, because it's random, there's still probability in there. So like a coin, you have a 50% chance of landing on heads, but you can't say without a doubt that if you flip a coin, it will land on heads because it has just an equal chance to land on tails. So we're going to look at it like this. So creating a Punnet Square, all you do to determine this probability, so remember, this mom has blue eyes, and dad has brown eyes, and mom says, man, I really want to have all of our children to keep our blue eyes because brown eyes are ugly. Now I have brown eyes, so I disagree with her, she's just mean. Now what you do is you create a square, and that's where Punnet Squares come from. If you notice there's an S there, so that means you can't just have one. You divide it, you put a little cross in the middle. So what you'll do is you'll take mom, and you'll take her alleles and you'll drag them down. So you'll put one here and one here. You can probably guess what you're going to do with dad. You take one R, you drag it right here, and you take the other R, and you drag it right there. So I hope, maybe you might want to pause it right now and just draw out this thing instead of just watching it, or watch it again and draw it out with me, because it'll help out. So then what you do is you just simply fill in the box. So this R is going to go here, and this R is going to go here. This R is going to go here, and this R is going to go here. And then you do the same thing across. So this R goes here, this R goes here, right here, and bring it across in here. Now I'll use red so you can see exactly what I was doing. Actually, you know what, we'll highlight it. Alright, so what we were doing, no, I'm going to use red. Decisions. So what we were doing is, this R will come here and here. Same thing, here and here. This R comes right across here and right across there. This R comes here and goes right across there. So what we have now is we have a probability. So you can look at it, and the kid's chances of having blue eyes is actually the same as flipping a coin. It's a 50% chance. So they have enough kids, and yeah, the mom will be able to be happy that at least, most likely, and again, we can't be 100% positive, most likely her kids are going to have blue eyes. Because these two kids, look, are the both double recessive, but here, these ones get masked. So let's do a few other ones just to practice. Okay, so we add another one. So here's our Punnet Square, and we'll do 2. Okay, now in this case, we have a problem. The dad has brown eyes, and the mom has brown eyes. But when you look at the genetics, you can see that the dad has a big B, little b, and the mom has a big B, little b. So there's our mom, here's our dad. And so it doesn't matter who you want to put on top, who you want to put on the side. So let's put dad on top this time. So we know that he's big B, little b. So you see how we brought that up there and then that one up there. Again, it doesn't matter what order you put it in, but I like to put it in the dominant one first. And we do the mom, big B, little b. And then we look at this. So bring those two in. And remember, this one comes across, this one comes down. Remember, he can't travel like that, he can't travel like that, he can't go across. It has to be directly down or directly across. And we got big B, and then little b, little b. And we can look here and we can see that they have a 3 out of 4 chance, and oh, look, lovely fractions. 3 out of 4 chance, because right here is going to be brown-eyed, 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 3 out of 4 chance, versus right here where we have a 1 out of 4 chance. So for anybody who can actually read fractions, I hope all of you can, you have a 75% chance of having a brown-eyed child and a 25% of having a blue-eyed child. Now, let's look over here. Let's say we have big B, little b, little b. So here's our dad, and here's our mom. So let's let mom go on top this time. So mom goes on top, dad goes on the side. And what we look at right here is now you have big B, big B, little b, big B, little b, big B, little b. Now if you look, 100% of these kids will have brown eyes. All these kids are going to have brown eyes. But this is what Gregor Mendel was looking at. So he sees here, here's your parents, so here's your P generation. Let's say they have a boy right here. This one gets born. And all of a sudden, you have, in the F1 generation, you have a big B, little b. He marries some girl that also has a big B, little b, just like over here. And they just so happen to have a 25% chance in their generation, the F2, so their kids, all of a sudden have a little b, both taken from these. So you can see how it can skip generations, and that's why a lot of times you see things skipped in your family, because that recessive trait hides in that F1 generation, then it pops up again. And sometimes it can pop up even later, because if you had somebody like this, they'd still have brown eyes in the F2, and then maybe F3 they finally meet somebody. So again, you can see here, so you have your grandparents, your parents, and then you. So that's all the fun things with that. Now I'm going to put up another podcast in just a little bit. You can watch after this, and it's going to be a fun thing that we can do, combining this, the Punnet Squares, with the pedigree charts that we were working on right before break. Okay? So until next time, just email me if you have any questions, and take care.